Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for English medium civil services aspirants. Atul Subhash, a techie from Bengaluru, ended his life alleging mistreatment, extortion and blackmail from his ex-wife and her family members. That brings into light a larger debate that are Indian laws biased against men? To have that discussion and to throw light on the issue, we are joined with our esteemed polity faculty and the subject expert, Sarmad sir. Sir, glad to have you here. So, first of all, I would like to ask you a direct question that, is it the case that our laws are inherently biased against men?
How do you want the nation to be run? According to emotions or according to the Constitution? This is an unfortunate, distressing incident that has taken place. But does it warrant a knee-jerk reaction? Let's debate. But first, let's look at the Constitution. Article 14 deals with right to equality. It also deals with equal protection of the laws, which primarily means that like should be treated alike. Those who are in similar circumstances should be treated similarly. If you start treating unequals equally, it won't be equality, it won't be justice. And that's what our Constitution believes in. Article 15 empowers the state that you can make special provision for women. In that backdrop, who is this individual who is giving dowry? Is it a woman's family or the men's family? Who is the victim when it comes to domestic violence? Who is the victim when it comes to sexual harassment? Who is this victim when we look at her and by judging the length of her skirt, we judge the character of this woman? So when the society is inherently biased against women, laws accordingly have to be enacted in such a manner that unequals are not treated equally. And hence there are laws which are favoring women because to rectify the historic injustices which have been committed against women. And that's the reality. Unless and until situation changes, we ensure substantive equality and justice where men and women are treated equally in all aspects. That's when we can have a debate that maybe there should be gender neutral laws in this country. But till the time harassment, discrimination, mistreatment, maltreatment of women takes place, this is how it should be run. Not according to emotions, but according to the provisions of the Constitution.
But friends, before we dive into this video, I have an important announcement. If you purchase the Unacademy UPSC subscription, you can now get it at a flat 50% off. Plus, you get an extended subscription period for the same price. For example, a 9-month subscription gives you 18 months, 12 months gives you 24 months, and 18 months gives you 36 months. Don't miss this limited time offer. Now, let's get started with the video.
So here, because you mentioned the term dowry, and if I pivot back to this case, the techie, Atul, in fact, had also alleged that he was being, in a way, blackmailed for dowry, and false cases were filed against his family members, and his family members suffered because of that. And his allegation was that they never demanded dowry. So is it the case that these issues like dowry, alimony, they have become a kind of a weapon or a tool which can be mistreated always?
Section 498 capital A of the erstwhile Indian Penal Code. Is there an allegation of misuse, overuse, abuse of this provision? Yes. But just because a law has been misused, does that warrant a complete overthrow of that law? Is it also not true that SC/ST certificates are misused? EWS income certificates are misused? Is it also not true that agricultural land is converted overnight into a non-agricultural land and sold? Just because a law is being misused, that does not warrant that that law should be overthrown. There have been instances of the misuse of Section 498 capital A. And for that reason, the judiciary is also evolving. Our jurisprudence is also evolving. There is an Arnesh Kumar judgment wherein the Supreme Court has said that this section can be used as a tool for harassment. And hence we need to prevent it. How? You cannot arrest the family members of the husband without proper investigation. I'll tell you something. There used to be a law related to adultery in our Indian Penal Code. wherein if there is husband and wife in a relationship, now comes an outsider. And if this outsider indulges in sexual interaction with the wife without the consent of the man, then it is adultery. And who will be prosecuted? The outsider man. So it was viewed that if this woman will not be prosecuted, the outsider man will be prosecuted. The law is biased against men. But look at it this way. In Joseph Shine 2018 judgment, the Supreme Court said that this notion that man is always a seducer, a woman is always a victim, this does not hold true now. And hence this adultery law was declared unconstitutional. But look at the patriarchal mindset of the laws as well. You're saying laws are biased against men. Laws are in fact favoring men. How? If this man, the husband, if he gives consent to an outsider to have sexual intercourse with his wife with his consent, then it is not adultery, because the law was treating that this woman is the property of the husband. Look at the succession laws in India. Is it not true that till 2015, a woman, a daughter, she was not having the right over the ancestral property as compared to her brothers? This is the biasness of the laws. So in fact, we should be debating how can we further strengthen the laws so that the discrimination, this maltreatment against women will come to an end. Is it not true that rapes are happening every single day? Now you will say that the number of incidents of rapes have reduced, but it is also that most of these cases are not reported in the police. You're talking about Domestic Violence Act. The conviction rate, one argument that is thrown is that the conviction rate is 11%, which means most of these accusations turn out to be false, which means false cases have been hoisted against men. But the conviction rate is also less. It is because there is an out-of-court settlement which takes place. It is also true that police, they are not registering these cases of domestic violence against the husband and the family members. So it is the police also which is acting in a biased manner, and the police are dominated by men.
Right. But while that makes sense, but if you also think about the frivolous cases and the charges which are being filed against many of the cases of live-in relationships, where, for example, there has been a consensual relationship earlier, and let's suppose they renege on the fact that they would marry or not, and eventually you will find some rape case or some other case filed against the individual man. So that again, does it not point out to be unfairly harsh against the male members?
This is where I may agree with you. Let's say there are two adults in a consensual relationship, even if there was a promise of marriage. But you two are adults in a relationship. And for that to indulge in sexual relationship on the pretext of marriage, and then this man reneges on that promise and does not marry you, and then you file a case of rape, I think this is clearly a misuse of the law, because if it was consensual at the time of the occurrence, retrospectively you can't turn it into a crime. Similarly, there are instances, for example, Me Too movement, where for the first time women in this country, they found voice to vent out their anger at the hands of powerful men who would victimize them, sexually harass them, abuse them, and they found voice to vent out their anger. And that's how the stories of Me Too movement came out in the media. There were also allegations that some of these cases were false. But just because some cases are false, you cannot paint the entire women community with the same brush and say, now we are not going to trust you any further, because that is the patriarchal mindset. We were not trusting you in the past, we are not going to trust you in the future, and we will use these unfortunate aberrations, instances, to point holes into this narrative and call for law change.
But do you also not think about it that many of these cases, such kind of frivolous cases coming to light, will that not impact those women who are actually suffering? So does that not call for the judiciary to take an exemplary action against such litigants who file such cases, maybe impose a penalty, or what should be the future course of action?
Glad you asked about judiciary, and we started this debate on this question, are Indian laws biased against men? What about judiciary? I'll tell you a few instances. Bamri Devi in Rajasthan, she was gang raped. Why? Because she was supposedly from the lower caste, and she was working for a campaign to prevent child marriages in Rajasthan. But the so-called upper caste men raped Bamri Devi. Matter went to the court. There were 5 accused. All of them were acquitted. And do you know why? Because the judge said that two of these accused, one is the uncle, the other is the nephew. And we will not imagine, and we can't even imagine that uncle is raping somebody in presence of the nephew. Is this not patriarchy? One more instance. The court said that what was the husband of Bamri Devi doing? Was he not a man? Why did he not fight the rapists? That's the patriarchal mindset, unfortunately, amongst the judiciary as well. I can tell you numerous instances where a bail was granted to a rapist on the pretext that you have to allow this victim to tie Rakhi on your wrist and then you'll have to protect her. What sort of world are we living in? So instead of debating are Indian laws biased, we should be debating how can we further strengthen and remove this gender disparity that is taking place. On judiciary specifically, process becomes a punishment. So if there are instances of false cases, frivolous cases, and then the victim in that case, who is a male, he gets drawn into this long process of judiciary. And that process becomes a punishment because it takes years for him to prove his innocence. And here in this case, you are guilty unless and until you are proven otherwise. You are guilty unless you prove yourself to be innocent. How do we solve that problem? Increase the judges to population ratio. For a long time, we have been advocating that there should be at least 50 judges per million population. The number is abysmally low at 10.5. Increase the number of judges. Force the prosecution that you should file for the charge sheet within the stipulated time so that there is no delay. And let justice be not denied, not delayed, but quickly granted so that this process becoming a punishment does not end up jeopardizing the entire movement. So increase the number of judges, ensure that the pendency of the cases reduces, and sanitizing the judges themselves so that we can absolve them of the patriarchal mindset. That's the need of the hour.
Exactly. My next question was about to be that when we talk about increasing the number of judges, that takes care of the pendency and the typical tariq pe tariq kind of a question. But is it also not about sensitization of the judiciary? Because coming back to Atul's case, here also you will find that one of the things that traumatized him is basically one of the local sessions court judge laughing on the aspect that if you can't pay alimony, you should commit suicide. So
that's what his ex-wife had prodded him, that you should commit suicide if you are not able to pay, and the judge seemed to have laughed it off. Here you go. That's the answer.
So how do we sensitize the judiciary? After all, judiciary also comes from the same society that we all live in.
I don't want to be booked for contempt, and that's for the Honorable Chief Justice to decide how do we sensitize the judges. There has been instance of Allahabad High Court judge also talking about a particular community. It speaks volumes about the kind of mindset that some of the judges at least come up with. And yes, there is an urgent need for that. But coming on the point of alimony, this is where there is a lot of anger amongst men that we earn and then we have to part ways with our earning, our wealth, to pay alimony, maintenance to the wife and then the kid as well. Let's look at it differently. For example, today I was reading the Indian Express and divorce was granted to a couple. They were married for 20 plus years, but they stayed together only for 5 years. And then 5 crore compensation was awarded. This might sound that this is bizarre, but please look at it this way. If I am a man and I'm working very hard to earn livelihood, I'm earning wealth, there is a biggest support that I get from my family. I don't have to worry about my family because my partner takes care of it. So the wealth that I've generated, there is an enormous contribution of this woman as well. So tomorrow, if there is a separation, does this woman not deserve a part of that wealth because she has played a very instrumental role in generating that wealth? That's the logic. Or look at the Shahbano case. Shahbano case, the husband fell in love with a young lady, divorced her, and this was the instance of the instant triple talaq. And but she can't feed herself. At 60 or 70 years of age, is she going to beg on the roads after sacrificing her entire youth to support the family and raise the children or the household? This is where the concept of alimony comes. If you're unable to support yourself, you need to be compensated by your partner because he has left you midway, or there is a mutual separation which has taken place. That's the context. That's the logic. So we don't have to go through this clickbait of 5 crore alimony has been awarded. You look at the context. That person was the CEO of a bank in Dubai, earning in crores. For that, you have to look at what is the condition, what is the material condition, the economic condition of the husband. Basis that you calculate the alimony amount. It is not something which is arbitrary. There is a sense of logic in this.
So before we go into that alimony aspect, another thing which I feel is inherently biased against men when it comes to divorce cases, the custody of the child. Isn't that overtly tilted towards women and her family members? Or even for that matter, I'll take it a next degree further. When it comes to child adoption, it is incredibly difficult for a single male to adopt a child, but the same does not apply to the woman.
Why is it difficult?
So, because the norms are not so easy anymore.
Norms like?
The child adoption law which was passed.
Look at the Maternity Benefit Act. 26 weeks of paid maternity for women for 2 children, right? This is meant as some sort of a protection for women. But here also lies some inherent bias, which means men are not supposed to raise child. Men are not supposed to handhold and participate in the daily chores and do the task. That's the patriarchal mindset. And for that, we have the paternity leave, which is for 7 days or 15 days. That's problematic because you are inherently indoctrinating in the minds of the people that women are meant to raise children, men are there to earn wealth. Let's also look at the custody of children. Is it also not true that till a certain point of age, you require more assistance from your mother as compared to father? When it comes to breastfeeding, when it comes to that emotional support which only a woman can give. That's how it is.
But that applies only for the infant age. And again, in this case, we see that the individual was quite distressed that he could not meet his son for the past 3 years.
Again, it's a misuse. I am not denying that there is no misuse. There is misuse. But few instances of misuse, please do not have a value judgment over the entire system of legal system that we have, that we need to completely overthrow these laws. Yes, can we make laws gender neutral when it comes to sexual harassment? Men also face sexual harassment. Justice Burma Committee, for example, changed the definition of rape, where penetration is no longer enough or sufficient or required to prove an instant of rape, which can happen to men as well. So there we need gender neutral laws. When it comes to sexual harassment at the workplace, when it comes to rape laws, maybe there, for example, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, there used to be in Indian Penal Code, section 377, which has been read down by the court because of the Navte Johar case. But it was not completely declared unconstitutional because there are still some unnatural acts which were covered under section 377, for example, bestiality. Now, sex with animals. There is no provision in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita.
Right.
So what was needed, instead of simply changing the names of the 3 laws into Hindi, you should have gone further deep down and overhauled by looking at the instances, because our system has also evolved, our judiciary has also evolved, we have more expertise over where the misuse has taken place. So there was a need to have a relook at the existing provisions of the criminal laws and then transform them and to create a new set of laws, which hasn't happened because all these provisions, word by word, have been found in BNS as well. So by just changing the title from English to Hindi didn't make any sense. So there was an opportunity for the government to look at and assess all these provisions of the criminal laws, which they haven't done.
So what you are alluding to is an inherent gender bias in terms of how the judiciary approaches the cases. So that is a larger issue that the society faces. So what do you think is the solution? Does Law Commission come out with recommendations? Is it the case that we need more women judges out there? And if yes, how do we do that? How do we bring more female participation in the judiciary, in the legal system, so that that inherent, at least allegation or the perception of bias, that is the biggest disservice to justice. So how do we remove that?
That's again problematic. When you say only a woman judge would be in a better position to serve women better, why not male judges? So it speaks about sensitization of all judges, regardless of their gender. They need to be sensitized so that they are dispassionately applying the law, giving judgments without any fear or favor, ill will or otherwise. That's what is required. And this is where former Chief Justice, Justice Chandrachud, did something well when it comes to designating more women as senior advocates. The examinations which are conducted, which have resulted in a large number of women getting recruited as the district judges. And that is the pool from which you will draw the High Court judges and all the way up to the Supreme Court. More women judges, 110%. At the same time, sensitization of all the judges, regardless of the gender, even more important.
So I think we have arrived at a kind of a consensus that the laws are not inherently so biased, but there is a need for sensitization which is there. Any final words that you would like to?
No, don't call it biased, because as I started this episode with, it's a constitutional mandate. Likes are to be treated alike. Unequals cannot be treated equally. If you do that, you are violating the equal protection of the laws clause under Article 14. There is a need for the state to make special provision for women. And for that, state is making various policies, programs, for example, the women's reservation in the parliament and the state legislatures. So that is a directive for the state to do justice when it comes to the preamble or objective of justice. That has to be done. And for that, should there be special laws for women? Extra protection? As I said, unless and until we become equal as a society, we have to treat one community differently as against the other. Because look at it this way, one is the oppressor, the other is the oppressed. If you treat oppressed and the oppressor together, you're violating the Constitution.
One other question comes to mind, sir. Owing to these cases of divorces and the alimony aspect, custodian aspect, and the frivolous cases which are filed, do you think the family courts which had been set up in order to fast track these cases, in order to remove the pendency of the cases, have they really served the purpose?
To a large extent, no.
No.
That is where also, as I said, we need to increase the judges to population ratio. Because to be fair to the judiciary as well, the cases are in crores. Look at the Supreme Court, 90,000 plus cases pending. Look at the district courts where more than 83% of the cases are pending, and it runs into multiple crores. More than 4 crore cases are pending. For that, you require more judges. And unless and until you recruit more, the pendency of the cases is only going to increase. And this allegation that process is becoming punishment, this will take us further.
So that, in fact, leads to all the other systemic issues that we have.
If there was no delay in the delivery of the justice system, you won't be talking about the cases of misuse. Yes. Because even if there was a misuse, there are checks and balances in place. Checks and balances in the form that police will conduct an investigation in a shortest possible time frame, charge sheet will be filed, court will give the verdict, then there won't be any allegation of misuse. Even if there is a misuse, but there are checks and balances. It is because these checks and balances have been weakened because of the judicial delays. It is morphing into this social problem. I'll tell you something, glad you asked this. In Hyderabad, there was a female student who was gang raped. And then the 4 accused who were arrested, they were killed in an encounter. But public at large welcomed it. Why? Because it is morphing into a social problem now. Judicial delay, the people would feel that it is better that police kills them in the fake encounter, because if this matter would have reached the court, then tariq pe tariq, ultimately after a decade, they would have been pronounced guilty. So we need quick justice. So judicial delay is morphing into a social issue.
Also leading to mob mentality, mob lynching cases.
Exactly. So you no longer trust the institution of judiciary because you think that it is an institution which only delays.
But do you agree that there needs to be an exemplary punishment set out by the judiciary against these filing of the false cases?
Absolutely, yes. And there have been multiple instances where the courts have done that. That is why I'm telling you, even our jurisprudence is evolving. For example, Arnesh Kumar judgment. It was a landmark judgment when it comes to the misuse of the Domestic Violence Act or the Section 498 capital A. If you look at the Joseph Shine judgment, it was also a manifestation of breaking this notion that men is always a seducer and women is always a victim. So that has also evolved over a period of time.
The commoditization of women, which has been inherently done by the society. So you say that improving jurisprudence takes care of that.
Yes.
But eventually the solution is increase the number of judges, sensitization of the judges.
Yes.
And timely delivery of justice.
And as a society, we should go inward and ask ourselves, is it not true that women are more at a disadvantage as compared to men?
Right.
A male employee gets a promotion, you clap on it and say that this is well deserved. But a female employee gets promotion and you go on and comment that maybe she's done something to earn it. And not the other way around.
Yes.
That is the mentality, and that is a reality as well.
But isn't there also an argument, sir, that it is better to not convict an accused or someone who has done something wrong than to convict an innocent individual? Any innocent who is convicted in these frivolous cases, that is, in fact, travesty of justice at its highest peak. So that is where don't the laws need to be slightly...
But why only raise this issue when something of this sort has happened as what happened in Bengaluru? Is it not true that those who are accused and convicted for terrorism spend 12 years, 13 years in jail, and after a couple of decades they are released saying, we are sorry. No compensation for them.
Yes. So there are conversations.
There is misuse everywhere.
Yeah.
There is abuse everywhere. But just because there is an abuse, do we need to overthrow the law? There has been allegation of abuse against sedition as well, although we replaced it with section 152, but it's more or less the same.
But isn't that also a kind of perpetuating the argument that right now I have a headache, but my body has other 10 problems, so why to worry about the headache? So if there are further mistreatment and misutilization of the laws, let's suppose in terrorism cases, makoka is imposed in many of the cases, etc., etc. But does that also not mean that this is a problematic area which is not talked about maybe that much? That the laws again are in a way not favoring, need not favor, but they're not balanced against men. Yes, I agree to your point that there are other issues of abuse as well, certificates, etc. But this is also a problematic area that needs to be worked upon.
Yes, and let's look at it thoroughly.
Right.
Not just pinpointing and cherry picking on one issue and then revolve our debate around it as if our society needs to just focus on this and nothing else. This, I think, is also a patriarchal mindset because we will debate this, we will take it to the logical conclusion. It was all after the Nirbhaya gang rape that we saw changes in the criminal law after the Justice Verma Committee. So do you need another revolution or another protest to push the policymakers out from the slumber and implement far-reaching reforms? Reforms are required. That is why Law Commission of India should take this job seriously, recommend, and for that parliament to function so that they can debate this on the floor of the parliament rather than debating on frivolous topics. So that's how it should be.
So that's a kind of a wish list. We all hope that could be achieved, starting from Parliament functioning properly, to the Law Commission functioning properly, to the judiciary. So is how when
and this is where our job as educators also becomes very important. You would see a lot of debates on YouTube. Are laws against men? Is it time to have gender-neutral laws? This is just to rake views and likes and comments. And that is why we are going and swimming against the tide, and we are still putting our foot down and saying that these laws which provide special protection for women deserve to be continued. Yes, there have been misuse, overuse, abuse, but that does not warrant that completely these laws should be overthrown. That is why there should be dispassionate debate on this. Why these provisions were brought in the first place. Unless and until you understand history, you will not be able to understand why these laws were brought in the first place.
So actually that was going to be my next question. How do you react to the kind of reactions, premature conclusions that the social media, the society at large has been reaching for the past couple of days? They have already announced that the laws are biased. They have already announced that men are the oppressed rather than the women. So how do you react to that? What is your response?
It's a reflection of the society. That's how we are.
So in a way
we jump to the conclusions very quickly. I remember when Me Too movement started, there was an allegation against a stand-up comedian. And after many, many months, the truth came to light that in fact it was the other way around. But nobody will remember the next episode of that story, but only the first episode, which is that you are a harasser.
Headline grabbing.
Yes, and the public memory is short-lived. After this incident, after this unfortunate incident, people will still move on as if nothing happened.
And it is easier for society to fall back on patriarchy always.
Absolutely.
And in a way favor men in that case.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I hope that this discussion has